Good morning, Vinyl community, and especially Dan. Excuse me, Vinylfury. Um, this is my answer to your contest, um, and the music that's playing has nothing to do with anything to do with your questions. It's just I got it on random, and right now it's Vivian Girls, Share the Joy. So I've been, it's not like I always wait till the last minute to do contests. I don't know why, because I think they're really cool and I have fun doing them. But this one I'm kind of glad I did because I kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, and I never really quite got answers for you. I know that sounds kind of strange, but like for your first question, which is who are some of the bands or artists that you used to like but no longer like or dislike very much. I don't think there's any bands that I dislike very much that I used to like. I've broken up with bands, in quotes, broken up with them over the years. I know that I went through a period where, like at the end of the 70s, when I was in college, and punk was getting out there, and Sex Pistols suddenly came out, and New Wave suddenly came out, Elvis Costello. Those are the two names that come up when I think of those two things. Of course, there's New York Dolls and a lot of other bands were just sort of hitting the airwaves and everything at that time. And I sort of left a number of bands behind. It's kind of like I just cut them off. I never really disliked them. I guess I didn't like them. One was like Elton John after the Blue Moves album, which I really like. I just never followed him after that. I can't explain why. No particular reason. I think it's because there was so much other music coming out then. And for most of the 80s, I just, didn't pay any attention. And same thing with like Jethro Tull. I bought the Stormwatch LP, and after that, I just never followed. I mean, there were so many other bands that I was paying attention to, and were getting my attention that I just didn't, keep following a number of bands. I think Emerson, Lake and Palmer was one. Works Volume 1 came out, and then Love Beach came out, and I took one look at that album cover, and I didn't even want to listen to the music. It was just, no, thank you. Who is this? What band is this? It didn't even look like them. It was them, but that was just it. It was them. It didn't even look like them. But, and to this day, I've never heard that album, so I should give it a listen now. But because that's just the thing, is even though I sort of cut a lot of bands off at that time, later on, like late 90s and then into the 2000s, I started going back. Well, even Queen, another band that I really liked, and still do, but at the end of the 70s, I kind of, I think after The Game, I saw the movie Flash Gordon, and heard the song and just never bothered to pick up the soundtrack. And after that, I didn't buy anything else from them. But I just remembered seeing how popular they were becoming, so or still were over in Europe. But I just sort of let them go, and I didn't even listen to their music from the 70s. But then I think later in the 90s, late 90s, I went back and listened to their earlier catalog again. And then in the 2000s again, I started picking up. And then they did the reissue series recently, and I kind of gone back and I bought a couple of their later albums later on just to try them out, because I think I picked up the Greatest Hits Volume 2, and I had some songs from later on in their catalog, and so I went back and I listened to them. And so the thing is, there was this period where I just sort of went, put everybody on hold. Kind of didn't like them, and then now I'm kind of going back and enjoying the music that I heard back then, but also listening to a lot of the music that I missed out on the first time around. Some of it I still don't like, but some of it it's like, hey, to me there's still a couple of Queen albums out there I've never heard, so there's some new Queen albums for me to listen to. So that's kind of cool. Same thing with Elton John. There are a number of albums that I still haven't bought or heard yet from the 80s and 90s. So anyway, so really disliking a band, just like, I can't stand what they do anymore. I can't think of any that I just dislike. There's so many bands that I've got going through my head at any one time. I don't know. It's hard to say. Excuse me. So that's kind of my answer to question one, which really isn't answering it, I guess. Or I guess it is. But question two is, how are some bands or artists? Who are some bands? Yeah. Who are some bands or artists that you used to not care for or dislike, but that you now enjoy? It's a little bit easier to answer. One is Bob Dylan. I remember I just couldn't stand any of his music. I couldn't stand his voice. I just didn't want anything to do with him. And up until about the 90s. And then I think I was trying to piece this in my head. I remember seeing him perform on an award show one night, and he was completely unintelligible what he was singing. And I just shook my head, saying, "Well, there it is." And I still don't particularly care for the guy, but I read the next day there was a review about his performance on this award show that was broadcast, and they explained what the song was, which was "Masters of War," and I think this was around the time of the first Iraq War. And basically, it sounded like, from what I remember reading, it was sort of his way of making a statement. He was singing his song called "Masters of War," but he was singing it to just gobbledygook lyrics. He was just messing up his own lyrics intentionally, because basically they wouldn't be heard anyway. They wouldn't be listened to. They wouldn't make any difference. So that was his statement, saying, "Oh, I'll come out and sing this song, but I'm not going to sing it word for word, or sing any of the words, because you're not going to hear them anyway. You're not going to listen to them. It won't make any difference." I thought that was kind of cool, and I just remember sort of, all right, well, maybe I need to give Mr. Dylan another try here. And I don't know what album I listened to. I think I just started finding a couple albums here and there, and then he came to play a concert at the Gorge. The Gorge is a natural amphitheater that's over in the middle of Washington State. If you look at Washington State, and Dan, the Columbia River comes down. You probably know where the Gorge is. You've probably been to a couple shows there. Well, it's that there's the river is cut almost like the Grand Canyon, but nothing close to that size. But there are slopes and hills up from the river quite high. And there's a winery on one of the plateaus there, and there's a natural sort of amphitheater area cut out in one section. The winery used to host shows, and they still have shows there, but the winery doesn't have anything to do with it. But one year, and I think it was around '95, I still got the ticket. I got to find it. It's probably stuffed in a Bob Dylan CD. He came, and a friend of mine wanted to go, and I said, oh, all right, fine, sure, it'd be fun to go. So we went, and it was a great show. I really, really liked it. And I had been listening to a little bit more of Dylan. I can't remember what album he was touring at that time, but I think I may have picked that album up, and I was enjoying that. I've since seen Dylan about 5 or 6 times. Saw them there at the Gorge, saw him 2 times at the Paramount. Some at the Key Arena, and I've seen him a couple other places. I can't remember, but so there you go. So I just totally disliked Dylan for a long time, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, it makes sense, and I get used to his voice. And one album that I really liked that I picked up was Basement Tapes with the band. I really like that album. I haven't listened to that in a long time. I should put that on and listen to it, but that was very cool. Anyway, there's some other bands too. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of bands I just never got into. It's not that I dislike them. Like Bruce Springsteen, talented man, great music. I think I probably just figured I didn't need to get into him because I kept hearing his music everywhere. But I know there are a lot of big Springsteen fans out there, and I just never got into him. Grateful Dead. I'm kind of starting to get into the Grateful Dead. I did a little while about 10 or 15 years ago. Started buying some of all things, the live albums, those Dick's Picks live albums that came out. And I've got a good handful of those, and I really enjoyed them. But I've only got a couple of, I've got download from Amazon of a couple of the regular studio albums. And I recently got the Record Store Day album for the first album, mono version of the first album. So I still got to get into Grateful Dead some more. And but as far as a band that I just that you really disliked. That's a little bit easier to answer. You know, there's a couple of bands there, including Bruce Springsteen. Who, again, I didn't dislike. I didn't dislike these bands. I disliked Dylan, but I didn't dislike. I mean, now I've got Dylan's mono box set on CD. If that tells you anything. So that's you know. But it's not like I disliked, you know, any of these other bands. I just can't think of any bands other bands that I just disliked. Anyway, I'm over 10 minutes, and I'd say I was going to make this short. So, anyway, thanks, Dan, and take care. And congratulations on your 300 victories, your 300 subscriptions. Hope to see you in Portland sometime, or the next time you make a trip up to Seattle. Just give me a shout. Let me know. I'll meet you someplace. One of the record stores. We'll run around and spend a lot of money. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.